Welcome. My name is Jules Matthews, and obviously you're here to find out a little bit about regenerative agriculture, and obviously you're here to find out a lot about regenerative agriculture because this is 2 days of all about that. How many of you out there are farmers? Well done, well done. Take a look around, see who you are. And then how many of you out there are people who would like to be farmers or growing food, but are currently not? Very good, make those connections. And then my last question is, how many of you out there are people who have land and aren't farming it, but would like somebody to be farming it? There's a few of you. So one of the things about Groundswell I see is it's a great place to make connections. And the more we can make those connections, the more we can mimic nature. Speaking of nature, I'd just like to start with a wee te reo Māori phrase. Obviously, I'm from New Zealand, so he aha, te me nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? The people, the people, the people. So thank you all for being here, because you are the most important people in the world. You are the people who are curious. You're the people who are providing the leadership for us to find a new way in how we do our relationship with Papatua Nuku, or Mother Earth. So really, I acknowledge you. It is 9 o'clock in the morning. Some of you didn't get much sleep last night. I know I didn't. And yeah, whatever it took for you to be here, thank you for being here. This is Mount Taranaki. So this is the region I grew up in, and it's on the west coast of the North Island of New Zealand. And I lived in a little place called Huiroa, and Huiroa is on the Forgotten Highway. And the Forgotten Highway is on the road to Whangamomana. Bet you can't say that one. So Whangamomana is the only place in New Zealand that is its own republic. And it became a republic way back when the two district councils started trying to divide Whangamomana, and they thought, we'll just be a republic. So they got a president, and the president for many years was a goat. So there are parts of New Zealand that definitely challenge other countries in the world, as you can imagine what those might be. Anyway, I grew up in a farm, and obviously farming was the essence of who I am. I was very feral, pretty much a free-range child, and spent all my time fairly naked and barefoot out in nature, and that hasn't really changed a whole lot, so we might hear some stories about that yet. Anyway, this is Mount Taranaki, and in Te Reo, we always recognise both the mountain and the river of the place that holds the essence of who we are, so a little bit of the beauty of the essence of my life. Oh, it does work. So I wear a number of various hats in the world. The photo on the right is on the left, whatever that photo, the one that says Mangaroa Farms. A few years ago, right after COVID, I came to Mangaroa Farms, which was set up by a couple of young American guys who moved to New Zealand thinking there might be better ways of living in the world. And they'd made their money in the tech industry and invited me in to set up a regenerative food hub. So Mangaroa Farms is about 2,500 acres. It's now 3 farms that have been combined, and we grow a market garden, we grow sheep and beef, we have a shop, and we're looking a whole lot into how to do things in new ways that work in conjunction with both human needs and ecological needs. And then the photo with that beautiful dog, that is Udi Alawapi, and he's a New Zealand huntaway. And that is a place where I live, and it's 1,000 acres that I run sheep and beef on. And I do that as my own sort of little aside, just a casual job. And then in the middle, we have Quorum Sense. And for those of you who are interested in farmer groups and how to kind of bring us together, not just with the farmers, but with the other people around us, to learn and grow together. Quorum Sense is a farmer-created discussion and meeting sort of forum for farmers and others who are interested. And they've got a fabulous website and lots of information. Whenua Haumanu is a 7-year research project with Massey University. So I'm on the advisory team for the sheep and beef portion of that. So I do a little bit of that. And I've popped integrity soils in there. And although I no longer actively do stuff with integrity soils, Nicole Masters and integrity soils has been a huge part of my learning. And I was part of putting together the CREATE program, which there's a number of students in here from. Woohoo, yeah. And that was put together because we saw a real need for somebody to fill that gap between the farmers and what they were trying to accomplish and learn about. Like, who were those people who could come in that were independent and not necessarily there to sell a product or a particular way of doing things, but somebody who could come alongside of you and provide that coaching as you embarked on your journey as a farmer. So a really important need, I think, in the industry worldwide. Coming into a regenerative model, I think one of the most important things we need to confront within ourselves is how do we shift our worldview? And I'm a white Westerner. You know, my forebears were the people who colonized New Zealand. They were the surveyors. They were the people who took the land off the Maori people. And in New Zealand, we have that growing, beautiful synergy between our Indigenous people, the Maori, and New Zealand, Pākehā as we're called. And how do we shift that essence of our connection to one of belonging to the earth rather than one of ownership? And for me, I think if we fail to start there, then where we go with this journey is to one of changing tools and techniques rather than being responsible for changing our relationship. Anyway, a little story. I lived in the US for many years. As a young person, I came here for a couple of years and saw how the British did their farming, and then I went off to America to change the love of my life, which of course went the way that a lot of those do. But it got me to America, and I ended up in the San Juan Islands, which is a little group of islands right on the border in Puget Sound. So it is in America, but it's just south of Vancouver. And it was a place where many wealthy people came and bought their second, third, fourth, fifth, sometimes sixth home, you know, so lots of resource there. And I came along and started leasing land and farming. And there was one day I was, there we go. There was one day I was talking to some people I was leasing land off, and they were busy complaining about how expensive the ferry was, and you couldn't get on the ferry where you wanted to, and there was all these tourists, and there was all these reasons that it wasn't working for them. And I interrupted the conversation and I said, do you realize that you are the very change you don't want? And I think that was my moment when I got what it's like to be Indigenous to somewhere and to have others come with their ideas, and usually things they're trying to get away from, but yet that is what we bring with us. And I say this because as we look to move to a new way of thinking about our land and our water and our relationships with the very essence that gives us life, I think that's a good place to stand and look from. What am I bringing from the past that serves me? And what am I bringing that is going to then result in me creating the very thing I'm trying to move away from? So we'll just start with that little bit. We've gone through the Munga, and we've gone through Uri Ahlawapi, who loves to bark. Anyone knows what a huntaway is? They're a big, barky, noisy dog, but love of your life. And that's Mangaroa Farms, our living laboratory. So that's been an exciting thing. That photo was taken in the spring of 2023, and that had been a bare paddock in the autumn of 21. So I like to get things done in a hurry, and one of the things about Mangaroa Farms is it comes really well resourced, and that is a great advantage. Having resources is an advantage, And I tell you what, it's your nemesis as well. So for those of you who think you can just throw a lot of money at this and you'll work it out, I'm going to tell you, it's not that. It is the people, the people, the people. Every time. So get the right people, get the right mindset, and it usually takes along pretty damn well. I'll leave that now. We've done that. So this is what we were going to talk about. A little bit about what is regenerative ag and why you might want to be interested. So why healthy soil and the case to shift our worldview, which I've already done, covered that, tick that one off, and some principles, and I'll go into that a little bit more, talk about the microbial bridge, some diagnostics, and a couple of things you can do when you go home, because I think it's always good to be able to leave these sessions with something that you think, oh, I can go and look at that and take the next step in developing my understanding of what this is all about. So what is it? What the hell is regenerative ag? And there are lots of thoughts and comments and ideas and definitions that people are trying to throw around. I so happen to think Dave Marsh did a really good job with this because it's broad and deep enough, and that is regenerative agriculture is about managing to allow measurable improvements over time in ecosystem function and biological diversity, driven mostly by the self-organizing ecosystem, i.e. Mother Nature, towards social, ecological, and financial goals. So very broad, very encompassing of all life. And why is the next question. The hesitation to define regenerative agriculture. And I think this is a really, really important piece of this conversation. And I'd like you to get this, not because I think I'm right, but I think it will help us avoid narrowing down what we're doing and how we're viewing the world. So the minute you define something, you actually limit innovation. And the beauty of regenerative agriculture is it's all about innovation. It's about innovation on farm within specific context with people looking to find better ways. So the minute you define it, you create a tick box. And I love organics, but one of the things about organics, it has become a bit of a tick box. And you can do organics very badly and still claim your organic status and do nothing to regenerate or care for the very soil and life that's providing you your farm. So next, nature is successional. How many of you that are farmers have issues trying to figure out your succession plan? Put your hands up, be honest. It's most farms. It is the trickiest thing. And I like to say, out there is a reflection of in here. And what I mean by that is the world, when you go to a farm, what you see is a reflection of the people that work that land and what they feel and what they think and what they believe. The state of their animals is a reflection of all of that. So nature is successional. We are nature. So if it's not working here, it won't work out there. So really, I know we like to do, I'm a farmer, I love doing, it's like something confronts me, I'm outside fixing the fence because it's easy. But actually the work for all of us to do is over here. And it doesn't mean you all have to go to therapy, but you know, gotta say it's probably not a bad idea for most of us, if we were honest. So that definition, that tick box thing, it has us be separate. It's nature and us. And one of the ways we get around that is to have things be outcome verified. So if we're measuring outcomes, or if we're measuring nutrient density or quality of food, quality of our soil, biodiversity, water quality, if we're measuring all those things and they're on an upward trajectory, then we know that we're on an improving cycle. So that brings us back to having some reciprocity with nature rather than looking for the next recipe, which I personally see happening somewhat in this regenerative world where, call it greenwashing or whatever you want to, but it's very easy to go straight to the practices, whether it's tall grass grazing or multi-species cover crops. That becomes regenerative agriculture rather than the essence we hold ourselves in the world in. Anyway, very quickly, I don't want to have slides that talk too much at us because they get boring, but very quickly why we might consider. So we enhance the natural cycles, we repair, there's always disturbance, either man-made or nature-made. North end of the South Island of New Zealand's having great big floods at the moment. So, there's always disturbances. How do we repair those? How do we minimize the harmful inputs without making something wrong? Build resilience, grow our microbes, sequester a bit of carbon, like to do that, enhancing diversity as we go. So what we're really trying to do is grow our natural capital, and I don't know if any of you came to the fireside chat last night with Gabe Brown and 3 farmers, but literally, let's grow some happy farmers, because what you eat is the essence of them. Comes in the form of a carrot or a potato, but what you eat is love made visible. So make sure you're buying off a farmer who has got a big heart and their heart is connected to their land. Why healthy soils? Again, few reasons. They provide multiple ecosystem services. They hold on to nutrients and water, and then they release them. So that is the ebb and flow of life from our soil to us. They have great structures, so they breathe. They're able to absorb gases and water. Hopefully they're full of life. And by being full of life, they'll protect us from those pests and diseases that have plagued modern agriculture as we've simplified our systems. If you've got a healthy soil, your weeds are not going to be the big problem. In fact, weeds are never the problem. When you really look through a different lens, you'll find they're a great indicator. A little bit like your tummy rumbling is not the problem. It's usually related to something you ate or did or the night before. They allow us to optimize production, and our organic matter, a lot of farmers think their production or their yield determines their profitability, but actually the number one determinant of a farm's profitability is your organic matter. So something to pay attention to those out there who are not yet doing that measuring and monitoring. Start to understand where you sit and are you making progress in those arenas. And of course, our soil is our source of life. So just as your skin is your biggest organ, sometimes I say, sorry, fellas, but Aussies like that. Our soil is the equivalent of our skin. And no more would you burn and spray and cut your own skin. You want to think about that when you're out in the paddock. I've already done this, so we're going to skip right over it. And this is just more of what I said before, creating that new Indigenous together. So we can't go back. I'm not Maori. I come from Viking stock, so a bit of killing and raping was sort of right up my history. And obviously took that to New Zealand. And I can't go back to being something else. But I think if we come together, we can find a way together. So it doesn't matter who you are or where you live. It is about connection and it is about collaboration. And it's about understanding ourselves and understanding our systems rather than what I think of as sort of the linear white folks' way of approaching the world, which is, I know the answer. And if you think about it when you were at school, who was the kid that got rewarded? Yes, miss, yes, miss, yes, miss. I know the answer. You never got rewarded for having the best question. And in this world, that is where the rewards lie. Have the question that inquires deeply into what, where, how, and who you need to be in all of this. Many of you farmers will relate to this picture. This is Jackie, who I worked with when we went to Mangaroa Farms, and Mangaroa Farms was a mess. It had been very neglected. And it's easy to come in and see what needs doing and get all over it. But I like to think of taking on a piece of land is like taking on a new relationship. You don't move in with somebody and start telling them how to do it, what to do, and when to do it, because it usually goes quite badly. Been my experience anyway. So what is it we need to give up? And I think the first thing we need to give up is that we actually know. And just be curious. We need to give up being right, because the minute we are right, we tend to make others or something wrong. Good, bad, all of those kind of things, should, shouldn't. Just, we create our world in our speaking. So the language we use determines what happens out here. So just pay attention to some of that. And I think, what do we take up? For me, it's taking up being responsible for what there is for you to be responsible. Firstly, here at home, and secondly, in what you're producing out there in the world. And sometimes the word responsibility can come with a burden or a connotation of burden, but actually it is our access to power, to freedom, to being the creators in this world rather than the subjects of, no hope. And there's a lot of no hope in the world right now, and I would like to think that we are the people that have signed up for bringing that hope forward. The principles of ag. What are the 5 principles that get bandied around? Who can tell me? What's one of them? Always cover the ground. What's the other one? Disturbance. Living roots. Animals. Pardon? Diversity. Yeah. So if you go to New Zealand, 4 of those 5 we do already. And what happened in New Zealand is all the farmers in the industry went, don't worry about that, we're already regenerative. What are those Americans talking about? Yeah, we already do that, we just need a little more diversity. So I think these principles were created with Nicole and us at Integrity Soils because we tried to broaden that out so that we could consider a real diversity of landscapes. And because those 5 principles, when you overlay them on New Zealand, and a lot of that is valid here as well because you've got, pastoral systems. So you're already doing a lot of that. And it has us tick the box rather than go, oh, how can I do that better? So number 1 is the context. And your context and my context, whether we're neighbours or down the road or different countries, doesn't matter. Context is always unique to you. And number 2 is that collaborative mindset. So if you're open and curious, you'll be headed that direction. Maximizing photosynthesis. If you're maximizing photosynthesis, you're going to grow a diversity of plants in a diversity of ways. So you're going to have some green covering the ground. And if you're not, then you're going to use some mulch or something like that. Inputs. It doesn't matter if an input is what we call a natural input. It could be manure from the cows. But any input, whether it's natural or synthetic, has both positive and negative. So optimizing or reducing those, whether they are synthetic or organic, having an awareness of both the negative and the positive implications of whatever you are doing. Optimized disturbance, of course. Again, like I say, northern end of the South Island, New Zealand, is flooding right now. So how will those people optimize that disturbance? Little things like a couple of years ago, we've got I think you have it here, we have an insect called a grass scrub. So it comes through often in the winter and it eats all the roots of the grass plants. And then you end up in the spring and the winter and you've just got big bare patches all over your farm. People panic, they go and spray. And a couple of years ago we had that, and Jackie, who was in the previous photo, said, oh, we've got to spray, we're going to do this. And I said, well, just wait a while. What you want to get with nature? Just wait a while. And all I did was throw out some seed of some plants that I wanted in my diversity, which happened to be chicory. So those areas that were bare then became big patches of chicory around the farm. So how do you turn what seems like a problem into an opportunity is one of the best ways. And just take your time with that. Don't rush in and try and fix everything. As I said, the context we're in is decisive, and we are an integral part of nature. And I think wherever you are, ask yourself, how does this landscape want to express itself? A little bit like a relationship. If you're telling your partner how they need to express themselves, it's not going to go well. So be in relation to your land and look to what does it want to be. And you just have to look around, and it'll be telling you what it wants to be. So from that viewpoint of we are nature. This is the most important one. This up here, it's a bad neighborhood. You ever been in a bad neighborhood? I have. I lived in lots of cities, San Francisco, London, all sorts of places. There's bad neighborhoods wherever you go. And being a bit of a free ranger, I've been in lots of bad neighborhoods. But the thing I've always noticed is if you're in good company, you can usually get out of there pretty much in one piece. So don't go there alone. And when you get over the fence, make sure you stop and turn around. Make sure your buddy's coming with you. We need to do this together. No one's got the answer. You are the experts. We just need to cultivate our understanding and our connection so that we can bring forth the very thing we're asking for, because no one else is coming. It's just you. You're it. So grab it. So what have we done? We've done this. You know, when I was little, my dad was clearing swamps. Huiroa, the place I grew up, is the interpretation, the Maori interpretation is long swamp. So basically a wetland. Great. I grew up with a dad who cleared the wetland with dynamite. And he would set the dynamite, and I would run with him and hide behind the big old stumps and trees of these beautiful kahakatea trees that had long been cut down and were rotting in the marshlands. We've blown that bridge. And we've blown that bridge for ourselves. So if you think about your stomach, that's what feeds you. It breaks down your food. It's how we grow. It's what regulates our health and well-being, provides all our vitamins, our minerals, all those secondary metabolites and enzymes, and it helps our body to function. It also determines our mood. So if you think about that microbial bridge, and then you think about being human, and you're more microbes than you are a human being, more you, the soil is the equivalent of your stomach. So the plant can grow without soil. We've got hydroponics. We can grow a plant without soil. But we cannot grow soil without a plant. It is a symbiotic relationship, and it is the one that nature created. So the more we can understand that what we call dirt is the gut, the microbiome, and the health of the plant, and therefore the health of what eats that plant, which is us and our livestock and all that diversity out there. We've done the same thing to our soils that we've done to ourselves. And I love living in America. You go into any big supermarket or pharmacy, and they've got aisles. They've got one for indigestion. They've got another one for constipation. And then, of course, there's the diarrhea. So we're doing the same thing with our soils. And even just driving around this country, I was up in the Lake District, and there was quite a bit of rain, and the rivers are running brown. That is your topsoil. And it's the same in New Zealand, and probably a whole lot worse, actually, because of some of the things we do. So we lose, in our little country, 192 million tonnes a year of soil. So that's 400,000 dump trucks a week. Just like, try and get your head around that. That is the biggest export we have, and I'm pretty much guaranteed that you have the same issue Your biggest export will be your soil. And the statistics I could find is that in 2010, it cost $1.2 billion to this country in soil degradation. Now, I think you've got about 108,000 farmers, and if you divide that, that's about 11,000 quid each of value that you're not getting back. That is the very essence of what you're farming. Can you imagine if you took that percentage of your store or your groceries out of your store every year, or chopped off the floor space or whatever you did, you would soon be out of business. So I think confronting some of these realities and not pushing them under the carpet, thinking we're doing a fabulously good job when we're not. And it's not just cropping land. I mean, in New Zealand, we do farm steep hill country, and you also farm a lot of hill country and rolling country. So a lot of that soil life loss is not just your cultivation and your cropping. A lot of it is actually off your pasture land. So how do we transition? We rebuild the microbial bridge. And the same as if you're unwell, and let's say you've taken antibiotics, what is it we then do? What do you take? Probiotic. Eat some yogurt, take some probiotics, some kefir, or all those things that we can do, sauerkraut, and repopulate our gut. And that's, as regenerative farmers, many of us are focused on how do we rebuild that bridge? What are the ways we can do that? And, you know, we've got cover cropping, we've got inoculation, we've got composting. We've got many, many ways we can do that and influence that. But that is where I think much of our focus needs to be. The same as if you, I worked with a clinical nutritionist for years, and putting that focus back on gut health and nutrient density is how a lot of us can heal our physical misadventures. So it pays to know where you're starting from, like what's your starting point? And the same as if you go to the doctor and they just take your temperature, but don't listen to you about what's really going on in your relationships and, you know, your stool samples and all those other things they could possibly talk to you about. We need to do the diagnostics. And these are what Nicole at Integrity Soils came up with. We call it the 5 M's. So it's mindset, firstly, top paddock stuff. Then the management. Okay, how does that mindset determine the actions you're taking? Because how you think determines what you do. So get that kind of straightened out. And then we're going to look at our minerals. So we're going to take a soil test and do a really comprehensive look at what are the minerals, what basically is in our bank account. And then we're going to look at our microbes. How's the workforce functioning? Are they there? Are they able to deliver the minerals that are there to the plant or crop that we're growing? And then organic matter, as I said before, the biggest determinant to profitability on the farm. So if you don't have organic matter, you are starting on the back foot. So get to know what your starting point is. And I think there's many people out there who will say, I wish I'd measured more before I began, because I don't know how far I've come. So get that roadmap, and then you can start fixing that bridge. Limiting factors. What is the first thing you need to live? Somebody? What's the number one thing? Air, thank you. So you can go a minute or two, depending on who you are, with no air, and then what follows after that? Water, yeah. And then digestion, decomposition in the soil, digestion, call it what you will. So air, water, digestion, and then your macro and micro elements, so the food you're eating. So if you look through your physical examination of your soil, and you look through the testing of your soil, you can get a really good idea of what is my starting point and where might be those points that I can start to massage the system to help it function better. So what are you diagnosing? So pretty much just covered that. We're going to measure our soil minerals. There's a lot of different companies around the world. When you're measuring your minerals, if you're going to continue to measure them, just use the same lab. Every lab has different techniques and different systems of measuring. Get a lab and stick with them, because otherwise you'll be comparing apples and oranges. Doing your plant measuring, so if you think about what's in the soil, the plant is an indicator of how well that's flowing. So if you know you've got calcium in the soil, but you don't have calcium in your plant, you can see that there's a breakdown in function. And then you can go, well, who makes calcium available? And let me go to work on that. In the meantime, you could perhaps add a little calcium to your plants. They need that for cell structure. So there's interventions you can do along the way. Nick Padwick was up here last night. He's down that away with the toe invert, and he does a lot of microbiology testing. So if you want to know that sort of stuff, there are people around that do that. Pretty easy to get that done and really economical. I like to do animal testing. So the same as you and I might go to the doctor and get a blood test to see where our vitamin D, which I think you guys are all lacking, I'm not sure. I haven't seen too many, 10 people. And I know we're all scared of cancer, skin cancer, but, most of our vitamin D comes from the sun. So make sure you get a little bit of that every day. So testing those things that tell us how well the minerals are coming through from the feed our animals and plants are providing to either our animals or to ourselves. And then this is the best one, a visual soil assessment. So when you leave here or while you're sitting there, Google visual soil assessment. The English have visual soil assessments online, forms that you can download and teach yourself. New Zealand has a really good one as well. They're pretty much everywhere around the world. You will find them, they're downloadable. And you can take those out and start to learn how to be the doctor and do the physical examination by digging a hole, looking at your roots, smelling your soil, looking at the structure. Get to know that land as your partner. The same as you might explore somebody else, get your hands in the dirt. There's a lot of indicators like the poop samples I've got there. So if you've got animals, you can go and look what's dropping out the back end. Same with us. If you've eaten too much sugar or had a hard night, it's probably not going to come out in the way that you might want it to. So look at those stool samples, because that's telling you all about digestion in the animal system. There's many things you can test, and I'm going to mention this company because I think what they do is brilliant. And it's called FifBiz Agri, and it's a New Zealand company that actually is for sale for anyone who wants a cool company. But it was set up by a guy named Pat Paletti, and Pat was a vet, and he was looking at how come our animal health outcomes seem to be going backwards. We're using more drenches, we're using more supplements, and we're not getting the results that we used to get. And what Pat worked out was that you can have a deficiency in something, and that'll show up. And if it's an animal, you can put that nutrient out. They'll usually self-medicate to a point. And you can have an excess of something, and you can usually see negative results. You've got bloat, or you've got mastitis, you've got issues in your animals. What Pat realized was that there was an insufficiency, a range in the middle, where it wasn't picked up by the animal, but it was that level which was impacting our production outcomes. And so he developed this system where we could take our plant tissue analysis and then run it through the diagnostics and know where are the animals getting the nutrients, where are they getting excess, and then what can we do to balance that in the animal until such time as we can balance it in the system and get the system taking care of it. So the same as you might go to a nutritionist and get a sense of how your body's functioning, we can do the same thing with animals. So I think it's a great tool in the tool belt, and a little bit of a plug for a company that is sitting there waiting to be a game changer in the world. Anyway. Soil carbon, it does two main things, other than for some of us who get paid for it or don't get paid for it and are chasing it. It is both the bank and the hospital. So as you grow your organic matter, you grow your carbon. If you're doing it well, you'll be growing both your labile carbon, which is the cyclical carbon in the top of your soil, and then hopefully you'll be growing that carbon that gets sequestered deeper into the soil, and that's the stuff we're really looking to resolve some of the issues we've created. So it's a battery. It's how we store sunlight energy, and it's also how we make that and cycle that nutrient. It's also the hospital. So pay attention to that, and I think you'll find some of the problems, particularly like right now, it's dry, and just driving around the country, it's like there's some areas that are suffering quite badly because of dry, and I think we will all experience bigger wetting and drying events as time goes on. So for every 1% organic matter we can increase in our soil, that's something like 144,000 litres of water, and that's over time in various rain events. So if you have wetting and drying events throughout the year, that could happen 3 or 4 times. So it could very quickly become 500,000 litres of water in a hectare, and that is your sponge. So that gives you your resilience to drought and your ability to mitigate the impact of heavy rainfall, because that sponge is really working for you. Go. Don't go. Now I'm stuck. Now I'm going to have to make something up, aren't I? No, there we go. So, curiosity is key. Whatever you do, think about when you were a kid, or for those of you who've got kids, what do? They ask those endless questions. Get curious. You could be really curious about what your person sat next to you had for breakfast, and you could turn it into an interesting conversation if you got curious. Mostly we don't get curious. So bring that childlike wonder back into your life and do the spade work. So mostly what you'll discover, the story can be told the minute you put a shovel or a spade into the ground. There's so much to discover there. Learn to relate and understand that part of it. So once again, download your visual soil assessments and get curious. I had this thing, it's not working. Oh. So firstly, your visual soil assessment, dig a hole, go home and do that. An infiltration test. I've got the website there, Integrity Soils resource page. You get instructions on how to do it. But basically what you're going to do is you've got a little cylinder, you're going to bang it into the ground a couple of inches, and then you're going to pour an inch of water into that cylinder, and you're going to set your timer. So you're going to do the first inch, see how long it takes to go away, then you're going to do the second inch, and see how long it goes away. You want that second inch to go and disappear in under 12 minutes. If it doesn't, what you know is your water cycle is broken, and if your water cycle is broken, you know your gas exchange or your air cycle is broken as well. So now your soil is not breathing as well as it could, and it's not absorbing water as well as it could. So it's a good starting point to understand those two things, because then you can start thinking about what might be the interventions. If you want to know more about that, we'll go into some of that at 1 o'clock in the grazing thing I'm doing. Another good measure, and I've seen people with refractometers around here that they're selling. So a refractometer is a way to measure how effectively your plants are photosynthesizing. And what you do is you take a little bit of leaf from a plant, and you can either bung it in a garlic press and squeeze some juice onto your refractometer, or you can, some people roll it. Whether you roll it or don't roll it, just do the same thing. If you're testing something, do the same process every time, otherwise you'll get conflicting results. But yeah, we're just trying to see how well that plant is photosynthesizing. And what we know is insects and disease only attack plants that are unhealthy. So they come because there is a signal and the plant is asking to be cleaned up. So your insects and your disease are actually doing a job for nature. And then we come along going, the insect or the disease is a problem, and we attack it like we're going to war, and then we get up next week and next week and next year, and we keep doing the same thing. So start to realize that those things that you're seeing, whether it's a weed or a disease, are an indicator of something. They are not the problem. So start to look, is it a problem? Is it a cause? And stop treating the thing that is not the problem, which is what I just said. Are we treating the symptom or solving the problems? And the question is, are you going to be back here next week, next year? How many of you spray, even with a bit of vinegar and things like that? I mean, there's nothing. And one of the things I want to say, don't make anything wrong. Just don't make anything wrong. Keep all the tools in your tool belt. It's like, if I was to get really sick, I'm not going to say I'm not taking antibiotics, but I do need to be responsible for the negative impacts of those antibiotics that I've taken. So there is a time and place for everything, and particularly if you're trying to transition from a high input system to a low or no input system. There's the methadone program, or there's cold turkey. Highly recommend the methadone program. Cold turkey's a bit ruthless, and some of you probably know that. And if you really want to know, set up safe-to-fail trials. So, I mean, I've known people who've got hooked on this and just thrown the whole farm in, boots and all, and done perfectly well. I've known people who've thrown the whole farm in and gone, holy, that was not a good way to start this. So if you want to change something, your soil practices or what you're doing, how you're doing it, your grazing program, just set up an area of your land and try something new so that you can really develop your understanding and your confidence. And then the other thing I'd say about that, and I said it before, don't go alone. So there are people in here who work with farmers and growers to coach them through all these processes. Put your hands up. There's 3 right here. There's another one. There's another one. So there are people, and this is where I say this is such an opportunity. Clock who these people are, talk to them, find out what they offer, find out how they can support you, and do it as a collaboration together. Right, nearly there, and then we'll get some questions going. So if you want to invite that change, firstly we're all trapped in our patterns. This is a limited computer. Spins around on the same cycle over and over again. You're trapped in a pattern. Just get that, because there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is. Our view of the world is only one possible view. So hence, get yourself a partner in this so you can start seeing through other people's eyes. And bring that curiosity. What are those questions? How can I see it differently? What would nature do here if I bug it off? How might I be wrong in this situation? What am I missing here? And what's happened here in the past? Because nature is successional. New Zealand wants to be bush. New Zealand wants all of us to bugger off and we'll just grow some trees, thank you very much. And much of this country is the same. If we left, it would turn to bush. So what and how is the land wanting to express itself? And get responsible for, we are arresting nature at a particular point in succession. So it's kind of like telling your kids they're going to stay teenagers. What a nightmare. I mean, really. So we're arresting nature at a particular point to serve a purpose for us. And then the question is, how do we in turn serve nature so that she can continue to do what we're asking her to do? And I think one of the biggest things we need to do is open our hearts. If food is love made visible, you cannot do this and you cannot make these transitions without opening your heart. So Hea, te me nui, o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to open it up, and we've got a few minutes for your questions. And there's a, thank you. We've got a couple of ladies out there who have got microphones. Questions? I can't see you. We've got one down here. Down here? Yeah.
I'll be the warm-up.
Okay. Yeah. I'm hot up here. There's bloody lights.
So when you're coaching somebody on a farm, so a farmer rings you up, says, I need some help, what's the first thing that you would do?
The first thing is to find out who they are and what matters to them. What is it that they're desiring? Where is it they want to go? And where is it they feel stuck, or they need some help, or what's working for them, what's not working for them? So just take their time. It's like building any relationship. You go further when you do that deep work first and understand and bring that understanding. So then you can stand shoulder to shoulder, because I think the distinction between a coach and a consultant is that fine line of how do we stand shoulder to shoulder and see through their eyes so that we can encourage their learning and conversation. Thanks, Mary. Yes?
Sorry, hello.
Yep, yeah.
Hi there, I just want to say thank you for being such a wonderful speaker. You had a bit of a tricky time up there and you handled it beautifully.
Thank you.
This is a really silly question because I think probably everyone else in the room knows, but we walked in a few minutes late and I don't know what that means, and it looks like it might be something inspiring, what you said at the end. So I wonder if you could just indulge me in what it is.
So what that means in Te Reo Māori is, what is the most important thing in the world? The people, the people, the people. And I really think, you know, we don't exist without Mother Nature. But right now, where we are in the world and what we're dealing with, it is us that needs to make that transformation. So it is us and it is you all that are the important people, because you're here and you're curious. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering how far you've thought into the future, like a 50-year plan. Apparently the Japanese do 500 years. What do you see in 50 years?
I think, being a Pākehā of Western descent, we've been really trained to think short term. You know, how much profit I can make, what am I doing, what's my retirement plan? We're real short termers. Being in New Zealand and being amongst Māori, they tend to think in hundreds, same thing as Japanese, 500 years, 300 years. And if you look out in the world, we really have had a system, particularly in the last 100 years, of today's solution becomes tomorrow's problem. You know, automobiles were developed to solve the problem of pollution from horse manure. Great idea, don't you think? So I think, yes, we need to look way further. And I see us doing a lot of things, whether it's wind farms or solar farms or whatever, and I don't think we're doing the deep thinking of the long term. We're just finding ways to keep doing what we're doing on the treadmill. So absolutely. How do we do that? I don't know. But I think we've got to give it a go. Thank you.
Hello.
Should work without pressing
Hello.
anything.
Hi. I just wondered, seeing that picture of the topsoil washing out to sea in New Zealand, whether or not you had a point of view on what New Zealand agriculture and the kind of ministries could do to stop that soil erosion. Particularly, I went out to Wanganui a few years ago and saw basically the river, even without rain, was running brown. And you know, that picture that you had was of, it looked like after rain basically, but if the river's running brown even when it's not raining, then there is a continuation even in the dry spells of this topsoil getting into the watercourses.
Yep. Yeah, brilliant. Don't get me going on New Zealand because I might just bang on about them a bit much. But we have you know, we're a young country, we've got a lot of steep land and fragile soils, and we have not been mindful in our approach to our land management. And look, we're so far from getting it right. We have a government that's decided we've missed the boat and now we should let all the GE crops and all the GE into New Zealand. You know, 30 years we've stood GE free, and while the rest of the world is going away, we're like, come on, bring it on. You know, we're sort of like the little sister who didn't take notice. We have a long way to go, and it will be one farmer at a time, because none of this change, I don't care where you are, none of us is coming from outside in. It's coming from us. And you know, you guys have got some real help insofar as your government subsidies and programs, and they help to a point. And again, listening to the fireside chat last night with Gabe and those 3 farmers, it's a good way to transition, to utilize that funding. New Zealand doesn't have that, and it is the reason, and I think you should take note of this, New Zealand took their subsidies away, and that money went straight to unemployment. And our communities struggled. And then we chased production. And then we ended up where we are today. So my question is, should production of food be a profit-making business, or should it be a social good, or is there some dance in the middle of all of that? Don't know, but yeah, Wanganui River is right close to where I grew up, and yep, she pretty much runs brown all year round. Sad but true.
So Jules, if you had a magic wand today, what are your top 3 wishes?
I've only really got one. I wish we could get that there is no distance between us. If we could get there is no distance, that I am you and you are me, and we are one energetic field, and if we can bring a vibration of love, there is nothing we have to do, it will come. Who we are determines all of this, and we are not connected. So bring your heart, open your heart. Thank you, John. One more, and then we're out of here.
Hi, if you're a bit of a beginner here and you're failing, you're on your 3rd year and you're thinking, shit, my soil's not working. Where do you start? And if you're Googling, what are you looking for? You're looking for an agronomist, someone to come and look at your soil and tell you to do what you're doing or trying to do. Where do you begin?
I'll tell you a little story quickly. I've got a friend, his name is Harv, and Harv swears like a trooper, so I won't mimic him. Anyway, Harv swears like mad, and I used to work with Harv a little bit, and he told me this regen stuff was all just BS. Poo-hoo. He'd been a big-time farmer, and he knew his stuff. Anyway, Harv ended up on a little lifestyle block, and one day he turned up at a soil workshop with Nicole and I was standing at the door, and I was like, ha-ha, gotcha. He's like, oh, no. Anyway, I coached Harv for a year, and it was about a year and a half into it, and he calls me up, and he's swearing away, and this isn't working, it's never going to work, and you're full of and la la. I said, hang on a minute, Harv, I'll come and have a look. So I went to Harv's place and I dug a hole. I got so excited. He farms in a sandpit. And we had done some work, and I pulled these plants out, and these great big Rastafarian roots bursting with life, and these vibrant plants waiting to grow. It had been a bit of a drought. He couldn't see it, and he wasn't looking in the right place. So firstly, find where should you look. And that's why I say start with that visual soil assessment, because that is something you can start to teach yourself, and then find out who's around you. Talk to some of these companies around here that are coaching and working with people. Anyway, it's time to wrap up. Thank you for your attention and your listening, and I hope the rest of your day at Groundswell is magically, fabulously wonderful.